Herzlich willkommen im Außenministerium. Welcome to the Federal Ministry of Foreign Affairs on the occasion of the visit of Mr. Káčer, Minister of Foreign Affairs, Foreign and European Affairs of the Slovak Republic. Herr Außenminister, bitte.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleague, dear friend Rastislav, it's a real pleasure to welcome you here just 1 month after your appointment as Minister of Foreign Affairs and to continue our really close and excellent discussions and relationship. And let me start by expressing my deep-felt condolences to the families of those killed at the Bratislava shooting 2 days ago. The attack appears to have been particularly targeted to the LGBTIQ+ community, and we very strongly condemn this hideous attack, and we have every trust that the Slovakian authorities will be able to fully shed light into this. After this sort of more serious tone, I'm extremely thankful for you being here. And sorry for being a little bit late, because there's so many things we have to discuss and we can discuss in a really friendship and open neighborhoodly manner. Austria and Slovakia are so deeply interwoven in every respect, politically, humanly, economically, culturally. And we share this common Central European space, and we shape it together. With 5.6 billion euros, Austria is one of the biggest investors in Slovakia. We have 2,000 Austrian companies being present there, and commuters, 40,000 Slovakian citizens. I'm looking at the ambassador, but I'm correct, are living here in this country. Even more commute every day. This is something we found out during the pandemic, how interwoven we are, our economies and our lives, how many people actually have a house on one side, live on the other, or the other way around. And it makes coordination and cooperation every aspect of our lives and societies indispensable. And that's why I'm very happy to say that the bilateral agreement on cross-border cooperation of rescue services in case of medical emergencies will be finalized very soon. It's no secret the last 2.5 years we have been in a crisis mode. There was first the pandemic and then the attack of Russia on Ukraine. And you could say, if you ever wanted to look at something positive coming out of these different crises, is that we realize more than ever that neighborhood matters, that we need each other. And I'm very happy for the very well-functioning different formats we have. The Slavko 3, which is now under your chairmanship, the Central 5, which was created in 2020, and I'm very much looking forward to the next meeting of the Slavko 5 in November under your chairmanship in Bratislava, and on the continuation of the very good cooperation among the Central 5. Our discussions obviously focused a lot on the current affairs, the terrible attack of Russia, war of aggression on your immediate neighbor. And the last couple of months we had daily reports, nearly daily reports of atrocities. And we have seen now in the last couple of weeks the Russian Federation even further escalating the conflict. And it's very clear that from our perspective, the unity of the European Union is essential, is the most important feature of our common work in the future. Yes, we urge Russia to end the human suffering, to fully withdraw its troops, and to create circumstances which would allow meaningful negotiations. But for me, the buzzwords for the next couple of months is unity, to keep our nerves, and to keep a sense of proportionality. We will react, and we have reacted very clearly with 8 sanctions packages, but we have now we need this kind of strategic patience to let the sanctions simmer in, to do their work, to have their effect. And there are many other issues. We talked about migration, where we have common aims as well, and another area where we have a common policy is the Western Balkans. And this week actually is a sort of mixed picture, because at the beginning, in Monday and Tuesday, we had this indiscriminate attacks of Russia on civil targets all around Ukraine. And then at the same time, from my point of view, very positive news coming out of Brussels, with the European Commission proposing an unconditional candidate status for Bosnia-Herzegovina. And this is our strategic neighborhood, and we have to be aware that the war waged by Russia has the capacity to be a disruptive element also in other regions, among them the Western Balkans, which is sort of, I always say, the center court, the party of the European Union, because it's surrounded by EU member states. And when we talk about migration, it obviously implies working together with the Western Balkans, because that's the main route where the migrants arriving in our countries come from. So there are many issues where we see eye to eye, others where we might have we agree to disagree, like on atomic energy. This is nothing new, but it is wonderful to see how we can work together, that this neighborhood is functioning. And again, a very warm welcome to Vienna, and I'm looking forward to the continuation of our discussions.
Yes, thank you very much. Dear Minister, dear Alexander, thank you first of all for extremely warm welcome. For us coming to Vienna, it's not really coming to a strange country, even I would say to truly a foreign country. And I can only subscribe to all what you said on how interwoven and how close we are. And this is centuries heritage in our history, which creates a very unique region in Europe, which binds us together in all terms we can imagine. And I'm really happy to see that for what was absolutely normal for my grandfathers, my great-grandfathers, that there was no border and there was a flow, free flow, and this connection was as natural as breathing the air and drinking the water. We could have overcome after 40 years of communism, and we are one world again, which makes us all stronger in all of that diversity of our heritage and that closeness of that heritage, what we have. It's extremely enriching, and I think we can draw the strength out of that heritage, even for the future in United Europe, which makes us stronger out there, which is a good thing. And I can only also agree that what we went through the agenda bilateral, there is almost nothing to touch because it's so good. And in all the burning issues, in Russian war against Ukraine, that is the topical issue number one to us, not only because this is our neighbor who was attacked, but this is what the principles of settlement of borders and all of that issues, how the world works, how the world thinks. This is crushing the principles on which our world stands. So if we would agree that this is done, then I think we would cripple ourselves for the future. Helping Ukraine, it's not only morally good because they are defending their own sovereignty and their own freedom and defending their own people, but it's also a very pragmatic, it's a right strategic choice for all of us, because we cannot undermine the principles of Charter of the UN and principles of sovereignty. So here, this is absolutely topical issue, and I agree. Sanctions work, we need to continue. We speak of elevating them. We need to speak what will help, and we need strategic patience, because we are very confident that sanctions work and they have result. We are very encouraged that Ukrainians, they are bravely fighting. We help them on that, and there will be no peace and no solution other than Ukraine will accept. As I said in the interview, which was today published here in the morning, we cannot allow, nor Czechs and Slovaks, because this is in the memory, second Munich, no diplomatic solutions done on our behalf and behind our back. This is, to us, it's unacceptable. Instruments of regional cooperation, what we have, we very much look into. Slavko, we are chairing. I called colleagues in for the meeting. We will meet soon. But again, as Central 5, I find it, I got very much charmed into this, even more than I thought originally. I was, and I was enthusiastic, don't take me wrong. But Minister, you absolutely made your pitch in the way, so that seems to be extremely sexy format, and I'm not going to explain publicly for whatever reasons. There it is. So, and thank you for your leadership on Western Balkans, and here we are very close on our position, so we work hand in hand. Burning issue, of course, it's the potential energy crisis coming up. we agreed that there is probably not that much of an Armageddon on our skies tomorrow. So we should probably calm down a little bit of some of the public debate, which is here. We got enough supplies for the gas, and we got enough energy to supply to big producers and also to households. But truth is that the overall market with energies is not completely free market. There is some systematic work to be done, and probably we need to get ready for some quick patches if there was a growth of price, which probably there will be. But I think whether at the national level or EU level, we are ready to seek solutions which will prevent any Armageddon becoming the realities. So probably I will stop here, and of course we got a little over an hour debate in the plenary, and I'm confident that if we went on, we would be finishing somewhere with a good Wachau bottle in the evening, and still there'll be things to talk about. But again, thank you very much for most warm welcome and an extremely friendly and an open exchange.
Thank you, ministers. Bitte, die APA.
Wait for the microphone. There's the Austrian Press Agency.
Austrian Press Agency, Martin Hanser. I would like to ask you about the border controls Austria has introduced to Slovakia. 1 week ago, these border controls were extended. Prime Minister Heger said these controls were violations against the Schengen system. Have you talked about this issue? Have you found a solution? And to Minister Káčer, do you think that Austria will stop these border controls regarding the fact that similar measures at the borders to Hungary and Slovenia were introduced in 2015 and were still in force? Thank you.
Die erste war für dich.
On the border controls, well, we discussed it obviously, and yes, we are facing in Austria an enormous increase in illegal migration. The numbers are exploding, and we had to take action. Not only us, we have to realize that many of the border controls installed in 2015-16 were still in place, and it's not to our liking. We would have wished another approach if we started to do what we said already a couple of years ago. An effective external border control of the Schengen area would actually solve this problem. But here we discussed it in the moment we introduced it. What we do, we announce it in advance to our partners. This was something where Prague did the first movement, and we had recently, I was last week in Belgrade together with a Serbian colleague and the Hungarian colleague. So what we're going to do now, and I believe we will succeed, is the same we did in 2015-16, we go upstream. It is not sufficient to have border controls at the Austrian border. This is not a problem arising at our border, or at the Slovakian border, or the Hungarian border. This is something which goes way beyond, and we have to increase we are increasing our cooperation with our partners, the Hungarians, the Serbs, the North Macedonians, the Greek partners, that we install efficient border controls all along the Balkan route. And I believe the measure we adopted is temporary and is proportionate, and we do it as we did in the past in other areas, in close cooperation and in close coordination and communication with our Slovakian friends.
Yes, we discussed this issue, and we even spoke on the phone before on this, so we are in touch and explain ourselves. This is no surprises to us. And frankly, as Minister Schallenberg is saying, nor Austria, nor Slovakia, nor Czech Republic, we are the source of migration. Slovakia has got a short Schengen border that is it's extremely well kept, and there is no that type of migration we talk about coming through that border. So we are so-called secondary countries for secondary migration. We are even a little less burdened on countries like Slovakia and Czech Republic, because we are not a target of migration, where Austria is under much heavier pressure. So we have a lot of understanding. Where we are As Slovaks, we are true believers in Europe and Schengen. I don't want to say it's a secret cow, but it's one of the most important elements of what we achieved within the EU. And probably people even don't realize that what is granted, that is granted, because the commute through Slovak-Austrian, Slovak-Hungarian, Slovak-Czech border is so high, and people even forget, because at the embassy sometimes we come to things, then people don't realize that they need still an ID to travel through. They take it, you know, like I'm coming over county to county. So it's becoming so simple for them. So now if there is something extraordinary happening and we are introducing some temporary measures, they say, oh, Jesus Christ, what's going on? You know, nothing is going on. We have a little crisis and we do little measures on that. But here I would absolutely agree that the only solution is better protection of external Schengen borders. That's no question. Here we need to support a stronger role of Frontex at the borders. Temporarily, Austria is helping Hungary on their border with patrolmen. Our ministers of interior met last week or 2 weeks ago when they agreed Slovak and Czechs will also send their contribution to help Hungarians on their external Schengen border, which is heavily tested on the Balkan route. But for Slovaks, if you ask me about what we do on our borders, of course we raised the level of control on border with Hungary. And not only in Hungary, but also on transit routes, which we know that it's used for trafficking. But we want to do everything that we will stay committed to openness of Schengen, because we don't want to make life of ordinary people or daily commuters more miserable, because it's thousands of people commuting daily. It's also not helping business, etc. If we will have to, so the cascade from Denmark to Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Austria, this will continue. We will step up with temporary measures. But for Slovaks, it's important to keep Schengen working and to keep Schengen open. That's extremely important. When you would look at the map and you see where Bratislava is placed, we will be shooting both of our knees if we were shutting the Schengen down. I think this is the last resort, and we don't want to do it.
Frau Koller,
May I just add, this is also our aim, to keep the cross-border traffic as fluent as possible. This is we have done, and this was something we did, and we managed through the pandemic too.
And we managed, yes.
And we managed through the pandemic.
And we managed.
And the measure now gives us the possibility to tighten a little bit the police control to fight smugglers. That's all.
Yes.
Austrian Public Radio, ORF. A question to Minister Káčer. NATO is now planning a so-called Sky Shield. I mean, the reinforcement of the air defense system in Europe, in the NATO states. I mean, 8 years after the annexion of Crimea, 8 years after the starting of war in eastern Ukraine, and 8 months after the beginning of the invasion, of Russian invasion in Ukraine, don't you think that it's a little bit too late? Or with other words, has NATO underestimated Russia and its aggression for so long time? How do you see it as a NATO country?
Well, you're preaching to choir. I'm converted on this, so I was one of those who were called paranoid, because I was one of those who in 2012 at NATO summit in Chicago was saying in a panel debate that Russia will lead us into confrontation because they need it, and some people said, Mr. Ambassador, you are too paranoid. Seems like, you know, maybe I am. But the only trouble is that most of my paranoias are becoming realities. Yesterday paranoias are becoming today realities. I cannot help myself. And even at the time when they came to me and said, you're paranoid, I said, well, if it doesn't happen and I'm retired, I'll open the bottle of best champagne I can get. That I was wrong. So just a little personal note, I couldn't resist. But on what's done, yes, we've been coming through Crimea occupation too easily, and Europe accommodated too easily with that. And number of countries, not Slovakia, and a number of other countries were saying we should come back with Russia to business as usual. We were saying no, until you occupy your neighbor's territory, there is no business as usual. And truth is that this is a reality. We never recognized Crimea, none of us, so there was no recognition for Crimea. And we got into even worse escalation. On the specific details of joint air defense, NATO always had an instrument of controlling the airspace. It's called a system of NATINATS. So Slovakia was, since we joined NATO, part of a joint control over the skies. So we already had a system of common control of the skies. Now we tighten up, and we want to come up with a project which will be even more robust. In Slovak case, the need is even more urgent, because as a part of our help to Ukraine, military help of Ukraine, we transferred our very efficient air defense system S-300 to Ukraine. In return, we got an advanced posture of NATO troops in Slovakia, which a strong component of that is 4 batteries of Patriot missiles. So in exchange, we got even multiple level of efficiency over the protection of skies in Slovakia. We thinking for transfer of our combat aircraft to Ukraine as well. In return, what we got was not only this NATO advanced mission led by Czechs, so it's nice to see Czechoslovakia brotherhood hand in hand. A Czech colonel commanding NATO troops in Slovakia, composed of Czechs, American, Slovenian, Dutch and German troops. That is a very nice thing. But also we made agreement with Czechs and now also with Poles that their supersonic aircraft will fly over the Slovak airspace and protect Slovakia. So we are on the right move. And when you ask me, you ask already a converted somebody who was always advocating this, and I was seeing Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg on Monday. We spoke on this issue. We spoke of some other measures, and we will do everything on Slovak behalf that we will keep support to Ukraine in defense supplies, in training for the soldiers. Now we speak of the EU mission. On that also spoke to Joseph Borrell on Monday, that Slovakia is supporting training missions for Ukrainian soldiers. And we will keep political supply, and we will do everything that NATO and EU both will stay committed to security and independence and territorial sovereignty of Ukraine. That's an issue of principle. It's a love and reason walking hand in hand.
Gerald Schubert, bitte.
Morning, Schubert from the Austrian Daily Der Standard. I would have 2 questions to Minister Káčer, if I may. So the first one is concerning Slavkov format. I would just be interested in how important is it for you, also as a former ambassador in Prague, I think, and also given the fact that now maybe communication within the Visegrad 4 is a little bit more difficult due to the different stances towards Russia, mainly between Hungary and Poland. And the second question concerning the murder from the day before yesterday, Minister Schallenberg was talking about in the beginning. So I know that we have problems with conspiracy theories in all our countries, not only in Slovakia. But could you just give us an insight on how dangerous this is in your country, and maybe even if you think that there were some government politicians threatened, because I think this young man also did photos from himself in front of the house where Prime Minister Heger is living. And so.
Yeah, good questions. We are in the presidency of S3. That is a quite new format of cooperation, regional cooperation. I'm very enthusiastic. I like the format. My predecessor, Ivan Korčok, liked the format very much, and this was a format quite efficiently used during the COVID, as well as additional format, Central 5. And we have here in the region a number of formats for cooperation. All of us, we do meet in various variable settings for that. Visegrad is it's the oldest one, but it's not a formal setting. It's been always an informal setting. And it's been going since its creation through its up and downs, where some members were pushing more or giving it more attention, some less. And truth is that now, in particular after war in Ukraine, that is becoming a little more complicated to be used for some political purposes as before, or political coordination, because we may differ on some of the positions quite substantially. So it's now, before, in particular on the rule of law, we were separating into club of 2+2. So often Visegrad was mocked that is not a Visegrad 4, but Visegrad 2+2. Now it turns, and it was quite clear during my Tuesday visit in Warsaw, it felt like it's Visegrad 3+1. But I don't want to dramatize on that. We do have different cycles in here, and we cannot get rid of our common history and our heritage, etc. So we will use the format to the purposes where we can agree, and where we cannot, we will not use it. It's no tragedy, and it's been a reality for a while in its history. And we can be more efficient in different formats, as we agreed. So on various agenda and on various challenges, we may use variable formats, and we will do. And even beyond regional, say in the energy crisis, for example, we may have different allies in more distant parts of the Europe. So we know, in the circle of 30, you get your family. And in family, sometimes, you don't agree on everything. That is family-like. But then you got friends and allies which you search for based on the agenda, and I think here we got a lot of in common. So we can find a lot of allianceship beyond going regional. But we cannot move. We're here. We come from here. For the second issue, this was the first hate crime in Slovakia, and I take it extremely seriously. Because again, if I come to my previous response on NATO, this was also one of my paranoias, which were becoming realities day before yesterday. In a debate with one of the journalists, who is often targeted by hate speech, I told him, this was already 1.5 years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, I told him, look, Arpad, this to me, this is not a question when the first hate crime will come. It's only whether the first hate crime comes. It's only a question when, who, how, and in what place. And I thought it may be you, as a Jewish outspoken journalist, as a Jewish Hungarian outspoken journalist, or that will be me, because I was targeted by hate because I flagged the pride flag on my embassy when I was in Budapest. I was subjected to a hate speech even by my own prime minister, who said the behavior of ambassador is unacceptable. Well, I remain the ambassador anyway, but so I often was myself an object of hate messages which I got through my mails and through my messenger. I kind of, we will hang you and we will kill all of your family, we will cut your balls. Imagine, imagination cannot be wild enough if you read those messages. My predecessor, Ivan, he showed me some of the hate messages he got. And you may neglect, say, 90% or 99% of those messages, because often when police comes and they knock the door, and there comes a poor guy who is often just a hero at the computer. But then, if it's only one out of thousands who get radicalized to point what we saw yesterday in Slovakia, what we saw before in Germany, what we saw before in Poland, what we saw before in Norway, we saw before in New Zealand, we saw before in the United States a couple of times, then we run into trouble. And here, I don't want to blame police or intelligence, because this is extremely hard to find a needle in a haystack. But we have to be extremely cautious. And I wrote yesterday on my personal social account, I wrote, we need to do everything, and politicians will lead public views. They need to be zero tolerance for hate speech. And we see, unfortunately, in Slovakia for sure, that the standard of communication, it's coming lower and lower and lower. And we see even politicians encouraging the hate speech. And I like to quote this short sentence from Penitential Act. When we pray on Sunday and we ask our Lord and brothers and sisters to forgive us our sins, which we commit by our thoughts, by our words, by our deeds, and in also what we fail in doing so. And we have to remember, this is a century, 1,000 years of recipe of how we should live, because we should nourish good thoughts, because if we have bad, rotten thoughts, that leads to wrong words, and wrong words, they encourage wrong behavior and wrong acts. And here, that is the path which is clear. So it's the education, it's the personal example, it's watching your language. But also the fourth one we often neglect, and that is failing to do. And it's a responsibility not only to politicians, of course for them, but it's a responsibility to every single normal, sane person, that when we see wrongdoing, when we see hate, when we see anything which is going against the normal behavior, a normal community, we should speak up at least, and we should act. We shouldn't be negligent here. And now it's in our face. It's in our face. And may come up to anybody. The list of potential praise, it's quite extensive. And I'm fully aware. I'm part of that list for a while.
May I add that we had a similar experience, you could say a fall from grace, on the 2nd of November with the terrorist attack in Austria, where people mostly believed that we are safe. And you're right, that this is something which is not, unluckily, something we only see on TV coming from other places. And yes, atmosphere is volatile. We had 2 years of pandemic. People are, you could say, crisis. There's a crisis fatigue. Social media and all this has added to the fuel. And I believe that we as politicians have two tasks. One is, and I always quote Charles Popper saying, in the open society, we have to be tolerant but intolerant to the intolerance, otherwise you kill our societies. I'm freely quoting.
Amen to it.
And the second one is not, and you said it very rightly, we are not here to pour oil into the fire. Clear line, clear red lines, and at the same time, we should never forget that these are very small minorities. Democracy is the rule of the majority, and the majority of people, 90–95%, they think differently. And we should not be subdued by, the shouting in the media and the social media, that actually most of people in Austria, in Slovakia, in every other country simply want to lead a life in security and peace, and show in every day actually a high degree of tolerance. This is something where we as politicians are called upon to reinforce that.
Sorry for coming back to it, because to me it's a personal issue. Because I was often, when this flag on my embassy, they asked me why you do it. And I said, well, I'm a privileged man. I'm a white, I'm heterosexual, Christian, reasonably rich for the average. I'm a privileged man. I'm the majority. But there are things in your life which you cannot choose, which is not your choice. You can choose your religion. You may be born in one and die in another one. That's your choice. You can even choose your language. I often used to say, national Hungarian writer Sándor Petőfi was born Slovak, and he died perfect Hungarian, and vice versa. You can choose many things in your life, but there are things you don't choose in your life. That's not your option. You are born with it. And being gay, you're born gay. This was not your choice. And we are obliged to give you, first of all, equal citizens' right, because you're one of us, and your state is your own, as those who are privileged like me, who I am. But also, my son got blind as a 19-year-old in an accident. This was not his choice to be blind. And should I accept, as some say to gay people, okay, do whatever you want, just don't come up public with it, do it in your own apartment. It's like telling my son, don't walk on the street with your white cane and your dark glasses, or telling me, don't kiss your girlfriend on the street because you're heterosexual. I just cannot accept this logic, because a measure of level and maturity of the society is how we respect everybody who is an inherent part of our society. Even if it was a single individual, because of that character, we are obliged. If we don't, then we do something wrong. And again, it's a personal issue to me. I'm extremely sensitive on that.
Wenn es keine weiteren Fragen gibt, I don't see any more questions. No, thank you so much for your attention and have a great weekend.
Good discussion. Yeah, you know,